Simple podcast. Super excited today to have someone on with an accent that is near and dear to my heart. Not many of us in the self-storage industry that are born and bred New Englanders, but Jeremiah Boucher is about the most successful New Englander in the self-storage business. Although he no longer lives in New England, just like me, never really leaves your heart. So Jeremiah Boucher, Patriot Holdings, was the largest owner of self-storage in New England for a long time. I don't know if that still holds true as he's divested a couple assets, but really excited to go down a bunch of roads with you. Jeremiah, thanks so much for taking some time and coming on the podcast.
Yeah, Thad, let's go, man. Thanks for having me.
Love it. This guy moves 100 miles a minute. It's fun to watch. I've been lucky enough to see him in person, got to hear him speak in person, and couldn't help but have him come on the podcast. So first thing always on this podcast I ask, because self-storage is such an interesting niche business, how did you find yourself in this space?
Storage was the less of all the evils in real estate, right? Single family housing, short-term housing, office, industrial, retail, multifamily, mobile home parks. I ended at the final destination of storage where, in my eyes, the least amount of long-term deferred maintenance. You have the safest, consistent, nice income coming in with your income stream with risk. And ultimately, it's not going out of style. Like the masses need it all over the country. So it was really attrition. It was figuring out what didn't work to find what worked.
So you're a relatively young guy. I'm gray and going bald, and have had some massive success in this industry. You got into it relatively young. Tell me how you got the spark for real estate to begin with, and then what drove you. I mean, look, you said something that sounds so simple, right? That self-storage has less risk than some of those other assets, but it takes some work to go figure that out. So how did Jeremiah Boucher, as a young guy, get this drive to get into real estate and ultimately put the time in to find the asset class that you ended up in?
Yeah, I wrote the whole book on it, right? I think
we're going to talk about that for sure.
Yeah. But the condensed version is, and we've talked martial arts, we talked sports. We're guys, and I wanted to play a game, and I wanted to compete after high school. And when I figured out that I was a slow white guy that was never going to do anything in any type of, no one was going to pay me to move my body and watch me perform.
Love it.
So I had to figure out, what am I going to do in life that's going to keep me engaged? I own something. I build something. It's not my dad's company, his paving company. I'm not working as an employee at Sam's Club. I'm building something for me. So I was really lost, man. I was playing rugby at University of Nevada, Reno. I got injured. I thought I was going to bodybuild. There was no money in that, and that was not satisfying. And I was lost. So I was partying hard, being a knucklehead in Vegas, the belly of the beast where you can just kill yourself in your 20s. Was trying to figure out my path. And luckily, I found an old course in my dad's attic a couple of years before, No Money Down Real Estate by Carlton Sheets. And it just resonated where, it was an infomercial course in the old days before even the internet was around. And I was able to really resonate with that, where I was paving with my dad, sitting with all the guys that are ex-convicts or alcoholics. And I would just read my books on the back of the paver, and I would look at it and be like, wow, man, I see a vision for the future. Like, I can create an empire. And my as a 18-year-old or 19-year-old kid, like, I could have something of my own, and I don't have to have money, and I can actually be free, have real freedom, because I just would see my father and my grandfather always stressed about their company. They're up in New England. They never took on partners. They never invested in real estate. But I knew I really admired them, that they owned their company and that they are their own man. And I realized, I want that vehicle, and real estate was it, man. It just clicked, and thank God, because it gave me a purpose, a passion, gave me a lot of confidence over time, and it gave me an outlet to really take all this energy that I have and put it towards something that I feel is meaningful.
So you read this book, and I'm old enough to remember Carlton Sheets commercials coming on at like 11 p.m., 12 p.m. at night on the last commercial of the night. You read the book. What's the first step for you? You know, you're working with your dad. What's the step you take to start advancing this vision you had?
Yeah, well, I had to kind of burn the boats, and I realized I couldn't work with my dad and stay in under his company. I needed to go build my own, I needed to create my own way. And I moved back to Vegas and I became a realtor. That was the last thing I could figure out where, okay, I'm going to work to learn, not to earn. And met up with the guy that I played baseball with as a kid in high school. And he kind of taught me the ropes. And I was just catching the market this was right after 9/11. So in early 2002. And got my realtor license and started to try to figure out this is how you do real estate. And it slowly was, well, there's a big story around that, but ultimately, I had a lot of challenges, and I was an investor. I was trying to be an investor, and I had to learn the hard way. I've had to struggle for a long time.
This is one thing that fascinates about me about you, because you're not content to do one thing. You buy value add self storage. You do ground up developments. You're now doing industrial flex, which we'll talk about a little bit. These small industrial business parks. You have a lending arm that you're starting. And you talked about something that I was thinking about as I was framing this question earlier, which is that there's always a problem. There's always pain. And so I'm interested to know, what about Jeremiah Boucher allows you to keep adding these challenges, knowing that they're not going to be easy, right? They're not going to be things that don't make you face significant challenges.
Yeah, no, I pain and suffering is fundamental to growth, and I've definitely learned that. And through martial arts and through just training and being able to push yourself physically, I really love. Recently, I read that book, which has been out forever. The Obstacle is the Way by Ryan Holiday,
Yep.
and I understand it. I didn't really understand what that means in the sense of the philosophical teachers, the Stoics, about that the obstacle is the path. It's the message that you need to hear to realize yourself to your potential. And so for me, it's like those challenges are the only things that keep me excited and engaged about life. Like I'm wired in a way, and I'm sure anyone that hits an entrepreneur out here, in a way that if I were in a structured format of what I had to do, when I had to do it, asking for permission, I'd literally not want to live. So it's fundamental for me to earn my freedom. And freedom, in my eyes, is like having some level of certainty in completely uncertain situations where you're comfortable being completely uncomfortable. So that's what I try to test myself with every single day. And luckily in business, there's not the stakes aren't that high relatively. We're not fighting for our lives here. What we're doing is we're competing in an economic marketplace to get to win, to make money. So, and it's just adding a lot of value to other people. So in my eyes, the stakes aren't that high. I've slept on couches. I've been broke. I've groveled for loans from people. I've had to pay the IRS in payment plans. I've had foreclosures. Like I'm good. Like I've hit my bottom. So now I feel completely free to go after some of these different avenues that I'm going. And I also feel philosophically, I've been going through this like the last couple months. Like I don't identify as much anymore. My business is not me. My status of making money in the world is not me. My friend group is not me. Like even my body and my performance, like none of this is really me. I don't have to go earn approval or acceptance from everyone else in the world. I can just express myself for the crazy unique guy that I am, and everyone should do that. And I'm good with that now. I don't need to prove it anymore.
I'm interested because this is something I found through my martial arts journey. We share this, and I'm going to dig into it a little bit. I spent 10 years as an instructor, have had a cage door locked behind me before, which I don't know why the hell I did it, but I've had it happen, and stepped into the ring with a guy who was 14-0 with 12 knockouts in my life, which another thing I wouldn't highly suggest to somebody. But you talked about it, right? Like as I look back at those choices, they really allowed me to do what it is you just said, which is I no longer care about anything external relative to judgment of me. And so I'm interested. You train out at Syndicate MMA, which for people who don't know martial arts, they have a UFC world champion now. Merab Delashvili just won the 155-pound belt a month ago. You walk into Syndicate and start training with professional fighters. How important has that martial arts journey been for you to really kind of discover that confidence in yourself?
Yeah, it's been recent, Dad. So I don't have the experience you do, and I started when I was roughly 40. I'm 43 now. I wrestled in high school. I wasn't even a state champion. I was an above average wrestler. Did some boxing in my 20s here in Vegas, very basic. But to answer your question, I got to a stage of life where I felt so tired and bored of the consistent, mundane exercise, of like everyone out there that doesn't do martial arts. You get in your routine, you go lift weights, you go do your cardio, and it's just, I hated it. So my thing was like, martial arts to me, and being a student of like philosophy and reading Bruce Lee, and just martial arts is a full expression of oneself, and it's being able to express yourself through movement. And I love the ability to be able to, you ingrain patterns into your body of whatever you do, and you start with form, and then you are so competent in the form that you can then let go of the mind and create through that form.
Yep.
So it goes down so far, man. But like it helps me to learn about myself. So I go to the Syndicate every so often and spar with those guys on Saturdays. And but what I had to do was slow down. I had to let go of my ego. There's a lot of young, hungry, fit, badass fighters out there where all the money that I have and all this, whatever the trappings of success that I have in my life, don't matter one bit to them. And I respect them for their journey, and I have to earn the respect back. So, but I had to realize that also I had to acknowledge I don't know what I'm doing to this degree. And I got a personal trainer that's a pro fighter named Justin Hughes here in Vegas that fights at 135 MMA, and he's a good striking coach. And he comes to my office in my house, and we go through these exercises of all of the things that I had to learn before I ever knew how to actually hit anyone effectively.
Right.
Where I had to stop and do like the Karate Kid in a weird way, where I have to learn rhythm, and I have to learn balance, and I have to learn the entries and all of the footwork. And before I ever knew how to throw breathing. So I had to slow down and start from scratch and be a toddler, and then now grow and slowly build up to having some competency where I can actually enjoy it and have a lot of fun.
It's so funny. My boxing coach just had his birthday a few days ago, and I didn't send him a message thanking him for teaching me to box. I sent him a message for teaching me how to dance, because the footwork was, and I'm a two left-footed white dude, man. The fact that Ray Velez taught me how to dance, it took a lot of work. But you go back to that, and I, we could go on with this. We could talk for 3 hours about this, and as you said, there's way deep levels, but that idea of breaking things down to the basics, and you got to the super basic, right, which is just breathe. And this is something we go through, right? I had it happen yesterday. Something happened that 10 years ago would have stopped me from breathing. Like, it just fundamentally was stressful in a way that, so I'm going to ask, in your business, how do you take those lessons from stripping down in martial arts and having to let go of your ego and understand that it's super basic stuff? How does that translate into the business side of things?
Yeah. So it's funny because I've said a few keynotes in these keynote speeches. I broke it down to like 3 lessons that I learned from getting my head kicked in right by these young guys that I'm trying to compete with.
Yeah.
Number one, it's the calmest guy in the room is in the most control.
Yeah.
So in any situation as a leader, if you can breathe and be calm and present, you're going to have the most options available to you. So that's just a practice, right? And it's great to test yourself in situations outside of business, like some type of competition, even pickleball, where there's not a lot on the line. But if you could breathe, if you're in the middle of that competition, you can see the different choices that you have. And in business, it's critical because everyone around you is going to feed off of your energy. And if you're the leader, they're gonna respond based on your energy, not on what you're saying, or it's what you're doing and what you're expressing. And I learned that from martial arts 1,000%. Breathe. Secondly, it is hone in. So if there's conflict and you're addressed with someone that is directly in a conflict in business, instead of escaping and trying to navigate the periphery and run away, those are the moments where presence and dialing in is exactly the time where nothing else matters. Focus on that one thing, that one problem, that one person, that one engagement, and then lock in. Like, that's the time to do it. Like, people think they can wait or they can fix it later. No, that's the moment. Be there and hone right in. And fighting taught me that 100%, because you can't think about anything else at all.
No.
And
you can, but it doesn't end well when you do.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that focus is critical. And then the last one is what I shared before, is slow is fast. So slowing down and feeling the movements, doing the repetition. So if that's acquiring storage, it's breaking it down to the parts, doing it slowly, finding somebody that can guide you towards what you're trying to learn or doing the education, and then building up to feeling like you can do it at where you're competent at it. And I had to look like a fool in martial arts, especially with footwork, because I'm not a rhythmic guy. I'm the same as you. So I had to figure out, like, the little kids that are running around and doing really good footwork and great movement, and they know exactly how to the entire thing. That I'm 43 and I don't know. I had to put that whole thing away. And in business, I see people that are afraid to be vulnerable, ask for help, be afraid to look a little stupid in a moment, and they lean on all of their masks of showing strengths that they truly don't have, and they're overcompensating and creating a false sense of confidence that's ultimately going to have them make a bad decision, and other people won't follow them or trust them because deep down they know they don't have the conviction or experience to be able to lead.
That's such a powerful statement, right? It's honestly, it's one of the reasons that I work with my partners now. We talked about this the first time we ever met, is their circle that they rely on to talk about things is so wide. Now, they don't listen to everything everyone says, because that's a whole nother problem, right? But this idea that they're not just relying on themselves to make a decision. They're smart enough to know they may not know something, right? They may not. I met you at the Scott Myers Mastermind down in San Diego, and they've leaned heavily on Scott and other people from that mastermind. This idea of not deluding yourself into believing that something's right just to mask your own inner insecurities. I think it's such a powerful, powerful statement. We don't talk about enough in business, because we see when people fail, a lot of times that's why.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And especially when you throw luck in the marketplace, right? I know I'm not, COVID hit. I had no idea COVID would hit. And I ended up positioning myself and buying 30 facilities around suburban Boston and throughout Maine and Connecticut, Vermont, and Massachusetts. I was able to fill those up in a 12 to 18 month period, creating tens of millions of dollars of value for me. So it was that was not strategically planned. So I understand how lucky I am around that.
Yep. So I want to talk, you brought up a bunch of books. And so I find this fascinating. I'm always like to dig into somebody. This is sitting on my desk. I'm reading it. And one of the things I like about, as I'm reading it, is it's you. Like, I got to sit down with you for a half hour. We spent a lot of time and bonded over our New England roots. The voice in this book is 100% the voice that stood on stage and gave the speech to somebody. I'm interested to know what drove you to, you've had this success. What drove you to write a book?
I was in Bali. I was in a relationship that was falling apart, and we were in Bali together, and I was miserable, and I was sitting at the pool, and I was just thinking to myself, I'm doing pretty good. Like, I was right about to sell a part of my company and get my first big win. And I thought to myself, like, it'd be cool to figure out, how did I get here? Like what, like us, we came similar roots, knucklehead that is a middle income regular suburban type kid that's just trying to figure out his way thrown out in the world is, how did I figure out how to get to this level? And is it something that I can share with other people? And I never looked back at the story, but being close to 40, I thought it was time to look at the first half. And like you saw in the book, the first half or the first few quarters of my life, and reevaluate what is it that I did and where do I want to go? What do I want to do in the future after I've learned these lessons?
I love it and so thankful. I mean, you're talking about things from ancient times. You mentioned, I just saw a LinkedIn post you did. You were hitting a heavy bag, and you were talking about Marcus Aurelius and Stoics, and to think about the power of writing something in words and how long that can last and how many people that can impact. Kudos, because that's not a small endeavor. To go and on the flip side of that, going back and examining our life can open up a lot of doors that are always sometimes challenging. So appreciate that you've shared that knowledge, and I resonate a ton. You and I, obviously, you could tell from this short conversation we've had so far, share a lot of similarities, personality wise and story wise. I want to dig a little bit now, coming off of the top of the book, is something you've been talking about in your social media lately that actually we're kind of sharing, because we're going down this road too. Industrial small bay flex. I'm interested to know how you decided to kind of take this pivot. You've done a couple. I don't know if you bought existing or if you're developing. I've seen you with some videos out in front of existing, so I don't know if that was something you bought or you built. But what brought you to this asset class, and why pivot from self storage?
Yeah. So currently, I bought and built over the last 3-4 years
Love it.
at a small level. Yeah, a handful of these properties, about 5 of them, and we have 80 or so storage facilities. So it's a very minor part of the portfolio. But two things got me led to this space. Number one is we kept having commercial contractors working out of our storage units.
Got
And
it.
we realized you can't have power hooked up in here. You can't work on a vehicle. You can't have these massive trucks trying to back in and get and unload a lot of warehousing materials where it doesn't fit. So the demand was there to a degree. And then secondly, more importantly, like growing up in a contracting business, my father's paving business, I realized the need and demand of small service providers, contractors, general contractors, all these different guys, HVAC and roofing and plumbing and paving. They have to get to a point where they get out of the house. After you get about 2 work trucks,
Yeah.
it's going to be pretty quickly, right? If you live in any type of residential neighborhood, they're going to tell you you can't have these trucks laying around here.
Yeah.
And then you have material supplies. And growing up, we would always meet at the shop, and then you get your orders and you go off for the day. There's a huge demand, right? That's not a very sexy space where Blackstone and all the big private equity groups, they don't want to deal with small contractors paying $2,000 a month with rent. And this product hasn't been built very much over the last 30
Yep.
years plus.
Time. Yep.
So yeah, so it's a huge need in the marketplace, and I love it. It's got a place in my heart where
Yeah.
if some guy is working hard, he wants to grow his business, he needs an office and a warehouse, he needs something affordable, he doesn't need that much space to start. It's just awesome to be able to give someone that platform to start their journey or just continue their journey and be able to scale it up and grow over time in something they own, their own business.
Interested to pick your brain a little bit, having bought some existing and built as well. How similar to storage as far as operation, as far as construction? What are the similarities? Maybe what are the differences?
There's a lot of differences. When I got into it years ago, I thought it was very similar because they're both metal buildings.
Yeah.
A lot more sophisticated. I mean, there's a lot more moving parts there in that building. The individual electric meters, HVAC, so you're going to have to heat them and cool them. They got to be insulated. Certain tenants are going to want offices. Certain tenants are going to want certain space dimensions. So you're going to build out a set template of space, or are you going to create flexibility and leave some open walls? And then you decide and work with the tenant as they come in. The leasing is a lot more complex because you're going to have to find the tenant that does qualify to a degree that they have a decent business, where in storage will take anybody that has a pulse. So it's a totally different, I think, game from that perspective. Marketing, you're going to have to be a lot more proactive in your marketing to get a hold of the right tenants that are going to want these commercial assets. versus the typical storage facility marketing, which is very simple on Google. And then, yeah, the economics of it, they're more expensive to build. So the building's going to cost you about $100 a foot to build a good metal storage. I mean, a good metal small bay industrial building, depending on site work and depending on your land cost. But just building, I would say $100 to be safe. Versus storage, if you're $70 to $75 for bare bones, so you're paying about a 25% premium. And then the other thing is the rents. It depends on your market. Sometimes the rents just don't pencil. And that's where New England's been favorable for us, where luckily we were able to get $12 rents plus nets. So we could be in that $15 to $16 gross, modified gross a foot, based on less than $100 a foot all in, because that's what we bought and built at.
Yeah.
Those numbers work out really well, but in most markets they don't. So it's a fine line there of how do you really balance it so you can still get a good return on investment, even if there's a high demand for the product.
Love it. So this is the last road I want to go down with you. I always try and honor people's time and keep this to 30 minutes so you don't have to spend too much time, but also so people can absorb the podcast and have time to really listen to it. You have facilities all over New England. And, as I've been in this business now for a little over 3 years, talked to hundreds and hundreds of people, and everyone's into demographics and market reports and how much saturation is there. And one of the things I've noticed about you and I admire about you is you have some facilities, and you've acquired some facilities and built some facilities in places that other people maybe wouldn't have gone to. And I'm interested to pick your brain about where does that conviction come from to understand small town in Maine. You have a facility in the town I was born in. Well, you did. I don't know if you still own it, if you sold it, but in Greenfield, Massachusetts, my hometown where I was born, not a town that most people that are looking to amass 80 self-storage facilities are going to go look at. Where did that come from?
Yeah, I got 5 facilities in that region. So
I love Franklin
your
County,
hometown.
Massachusetts. Shout out to your dad. He's probably going to watch this at some point. So,
yeah, awesome. So to me, you gotta use common sense. So a lot of people in the private equity world, they get so damn sophisticated that it's all about numbers and analytics. And you have to have a certain traffic count. You got to have a certain amount of people that are right around your facility. And I get that. And I've made mistakes, lots of them. But a couple things I've learned, if you can see a Walmart or you can smell a McDonald's, you're going to kill it with storage. They already did all the studies. So that's the first thing. Secondly, if you have traffic, regardless of if people are constantly going by your facility and there's somewhat minimal supply or competition, you're going to do well. Visibility and is going to really create a lot of demand there. People need storage regardless. It's a convenience item. And then really the last thing is if people are going, like in our region of where we're from in New England, a lot of the rural areas, people visit there a lot. That's what they love mountains. They love water. So they love going to lakes, Winnipesaukee and all the lakes up in Maine.
Yeah.
They love the seacoast. They're going to be there with their families. That's people travel from all over the country to be in New England in the summers. They love hiking. They love mountains. They love skiing. So people are there and they have money. And these communities have to service all these people that doesn't show up on your demographic report, but this influx of people throughout the region creates economic stability. And for me, it was a no-brainer where if I'm able to fill up 100 or 200 or 300 units, and it's very, very, and there's a high demand, there's a high traffic count of people visiting this area each year, they can see my facility, and they probably have a lot of toys. They probably are using a lot of boats, RVs, ATVs, kayaking, and there's a lot of people here that don't have a lot of affordable housing. That's the great other thing about our region is there's very limited housing up in the region. It's a perfect formula for me where, and I can play around with it. Just like when you're trying something new in martial arts, you could do it in a way where you're not risking everything. You don't have to throw the haymaker right away. I can do something a little. I can make a small investment, do a small development, see how it worked out. What were the attributes of the area that worked? What didn't work? And then I can take bigger risks as I get more confidence. And that's what I did to get over these 80 facilities.
Love the story, man. We're fast approaching. I'm going to wrap this thing up. We didn't even get to talk Celtics, Patriots, Red Sox,
I
Bruins,
know.
which if the Celtics had, we're taping this on a Wednesday. The Celtics lost their game last night, so I'm a little down on the Celtics right now, but they've given us some blessings over time. We're going to have to do this again sometime, and we'll dive. Really can't even thank you enough for taking the time to come on and share your journey. And it's inspiring. I know it inspired me the first time I got to hear you speak in person and hearing you on the podcast even more so. So appreciate you taking that time. I know how busy you are.
Love it, Dad. Yeah. And the Audible book I narrated. So yeah, people are busy. Yeah. Check out the Audible book. But yeah.
Finding your edge, man. It's out there.
That's
Love
it. And I'm patriotholdings.com, a tribute to the dynasty that is the best sports organization of all time, hands down. That's why I named my company it, because of the culture that they created. And we embody that culture, man. Do your job, lead by example, take your own personal responsibility for your future. And the team is more important than just the individual. So, man,
it's so funny you say that. I just put a post up about Tom Brady. It was kind of a mocking the play on Donald Trump, but how blessed. I was 27 years old when he took over the as that quarterback of the Patriots. And, so I spent a lot of time with that team being absolutely terrible, but how blessed to have that example of how to do it the right way. Right.
I study it, man. So that's why we are Patriot Holdings.
I didn't know that. I'm glad I brought that up because I learned something that I didn't know. Listen, you're going to see all of Jeremiah's information scrolling on the bottom. Thank you so much, man. This is it for this week's episode of Self-Storage Made Simple. Thank you to the folks at Proprise. You can visit them at proprise.io. They sponsor the podcast. Unbelievable data platform for finding new pieces of raw land and listings around the country. Jeremiah, we'll talk again soon. Hope I can have you back again.
All right, brother.
Thanks everybody.
See you, man.